Welcome to Creepy Vibes. For months, I've been uncovering the darkest true horror stories Texas has tried to bury. Stories from ghost towns no longer on the map, gas stations that never close, and roads that seem to loop endlessly through. The dark, you've listened, you've watched, then vanished, like the stories themselves. But tonight, that silence ends. This is 20 disturbing true Texas trucker horror stories, lonely highways, deserted rest stops, voices on the CB that know your name, even when you haven't spoken. These stories aren't just strange, they're warnings. Subscribe. Now, before you become part of the next one, where are you watching from? And what time is it where you are? Let me know in the comments. If you're still here, let's begin. There was a stretch of Highway 90 just outside Van Horn where the desert didn't feel like sand and silence. It felt like something holding its breath. The kind of place where the wind cuts too clean and the sky at dusk stains red like something already bleeding. You drove through it fast, eyes forward, windows up, music off. Every trucker knew it, but no one talked about it on the radio. You kept that stretch of highway in the corner of your eye and prayed your tank would last you. Past mile marker 212, Tommy. Gleason didn't pray much. He was a long-haul independent who didn't believe in superstitions. Ghost stories or God. After 23 years and 12 gears, he'd seen everything the road had to offer. Meth tweakers waving knives at rest stops. Dead deer standing on their hind legs like puppets after a rig hit them too hard. And once in Louisiana, a preacher who flagged him down just to scream, "Don't haul the living for the dead." That had stuck with him longer than it should have, but Tommy wasn't a man who spooked. Easy until he pulled into that gas station on a Thursday night just outside Van Horn. There wasn't a sign. No glowing logo, no posted hours, just 3 pumps, a flickering overhead light, and a busted vending machine leaning against the cinder block wall of the store. The kind of place that should have been abandoned but wasn't. The kind that looked like it was waiting. Tommy hadn't even meant to stop. He had half a tank, enough to get him to Marfa, but the needle dipped a little lower than he liked. And something about the air made his skin crawl. The heat felt thick, wet. The wind had died completely. He pulled into the middle lane. Pump 3. The station didn't look old, it looked wrong. Like a movie set meant to look old, the gravel was too even. The grime on the window looked painted. Even the flicker in the light above him repeated on a loop. 1 2. Pause. 1 2. Pause. Tommy stepped out and smelled it immediately. Not gas. Not oil. Blood. Metallic and warm. Not like roadkill. Not like a broken nose. Richer. Thicker. Like someone had taken a kitchen knife to a body and let it pour onto concrete. He turned around and looked behind the pump. Nothing. No stains. No red streaks. Just dry, flat desert and a moon that looked like it was trying to warn him. Still, he needed fuel. He swiped his card. Nothing happened. The screen stayed dark. Then it blinked. Welcome. Tucoas. He hadn't entered a name. The pump didn't have a keypad. He should have left right then. But something in his spine locked him in place. He couldn't move. Couldn't even tell you why. It felt like watching a car crash in slow motion. His hand moved on its own and lifted the nozzle. The fuel cap was already open. He hadn't opened it. The nozzle clicked into place with a sound too loud, too wet. And the gas, if it was gas, started flowing. He heard it. That gurgle, thick, bubbling, like it had to fight to get through the hose. His hand tightened on the handle. He tried to let go. He couldn't. The smell hit again, stronger now. Pure copper. It got in his mouth, his eyes, made his nose run and stomach churn. But his body didn't move. It kept pumping, kept holding. That's when he heard it. A whisper from inside the pump. Just one word. Closer. He leaned in without meaning to. The nozzle kept pouring. The hose jerked slightly, like something was tugging back from inside. The pump screen flickered again. See me, the numbers didn't show gallons. They showed a date. August 14th, 1996. Tommy's hands trembled. His brother had died on that date. He stepped back, stumbled, hit the side of his cab. The nozzle slipped out, dragging a thin black-red stream across the gravel. It didn't soak in. It shimmered. He turned to get in the cab, but the door was already open. The cab light was on. His seatbelt was hanging over the wheel, unlatched. He'd left it buckled. Someone had been inside, or still was. He swung up, half expecting to see a drifter or a thief, but the cab was empty. The air, though it was freezing, cold enough to fog the windshield from the inside. He slammed the door, locked it, and peeled out of the lot like the devil himself was hitching a ride. The tank was only half full. 2 miles down the road, his CB came to life, static at first. Then, you left it open. A voice. His voice. You let it in. Tommy didn't remember blacking out, but he must have, because when he came to, he was pulled over on the shoulder, head on the wheel, truck dead. Air hot again. The tank was full. Burnt smell in the air. No sign of damage except his tires, which were melted to the rims. The whole rig sat on ruined rubber. No sign of fire. Just heat. He didn't tell anyone. Not the tow truck. Not the shop in El Paso. Not even his ex-wife when she asked. Why, he kept flinching in his sleep. But he never hauled nights again. And he never stopped in Van Horn. They found another truck there a month later, charred to the frame. No driver. Just a full tank and a pump handle hanging from the side. It was pump 3. Always pump 3. The CB crackled like dry leaves in a dead man's fist. Cole Mercer twisted the volume knob of his dusty Cobra 29LX, half expecting the static to vanish. It didn't. Out on the long, flat stretch of I-40 west of Amarillo, with the moon buried behind storm-gray clouds and only the occasional flick of a passing rig's lights for company, the only music was the hum of tires on blacktop and that goddamned radio hiss. He was 30 miles east of the Flying J, hauling a load of frozen chicken. That didn't care if it showed up late. Dispatch had told him to take its slow ice warnings, and Cole didn't argue. He liked driving at night. He liked the quiet. Except tonight wasn't quiet. It started just before midnight, somewhere near the exit to Claude, when the hiss turned rhythmic, a soft clicking beneath the static like fingernails tapping on glass. Then a voice, a whisper at first, not even words, just a murmur tucked between frequencies. Cole squinted at the CB screen. He was on Channel 19, the usual trucker band. He flipped the channel knob, one click at a time, until he hit 13, and the world turned cold. Please, help me. The voice was unmistakably female. Frantic. Wet-sounding, like she was crying or her mouth was full of something thick. Her sobs weren't clear at first, garbled by whatever ancient filter the signal was passing through. But then, don't let him. Don't let him put me back. Cole's skin prickled under his flannel. He checked his phone, no service. The CB crackled again. He's coming? He's right behind. Dead air. The radio went silent, then howled with a sudden burst of static so loud he nearly veered into the shoulder. When it settled again, she was gone. Just the empty hiss. Cole didn't scare easy. Not after 20 years on the road. He'd seen flipped semis with driver's legs still twitching, been chased by a naked tweaker in Tulsa, and once ran over a goddamn deer that got up and limped off like nothing happened. But this was different. He switched back to 19 and tried to forget it. Didn't work. 30 minutes later, as he passed the old feedlot east of Amarillo, the one local said, Shut down in the late 90s after some kind of EPS scandal, he heard her again. Only this time it wasn't a cry. It was a scream. Raw and jagged, like someone pulling a rusted nail out of their own stomach. "Don't put me back in the freezer. Please. I was good. I was good. I was." Click. Static. Silence. Cole pulled. Over. The shoulder was wide, flat, and bathed in the weak orange wash of a flickering lamppost that buzzed like a dying fly. He'd killed the engine. The radio stayed on. He stared at channel 13. It shouldn't have been active. Everyone in the industry knew that frequency had been decommissioned years ago, after some kind of interference issue in '97. Some said it was because a trucker went crazy after listening to it too long, heard voices, drove his rig full speed into the side of an overpass. Others said it had something to do with a woman who was murdered off a rest stop near Palo Duro Canyon, buried beneath the floor of a refrigerated trailer that never made it to Dallas. Her killer vanished. Cole hadn't thought about that story. In years, he listened. Nothing now. Just that hiss, rising and falling like breath. He opened the door, stepped down into the freezing night, and lit a cigarette with hands that didn't want to hold still. The cold got into your bones out here, even in late March. Even more when you were sweating and couldn't figure out why. That's when he noticed the lights. There, across the barren field past the fence line, were a row of red brake lights. No headlights. No engine noise. Just 5 round dots hovering in the dark, perfectly spaced like some ghost convoy stopped in formation. Cole blinked. They were gone. Back in the cab, he shut the door, threw the rig into drive, and started rolling. Slowly at first, then faster. He stayed off channel 13 until the voice forced him back. He's got a new one. He's doing it again. Please. Cole gritted his teeth and slammed the knob. The display lit up blood red for a moment, just a glitch. He thought, but the screen showed something impossible. Date, March 28, 1997 time, 1:14 a.m. His hands went clammy. That wasn't today's date. That was the night the feedlot burned. That was the night the dispatcher for West Texas Freight heard a woman screaming through the CB at a Flying J station. And then never again. Cole switched the radio off completely and drove in silence, but silence didn't help. Because then it wasn't the CB that talked. It was the voice inside his cab. You passed him. It whispered. He slammed the brakes. The trailer jackknifed, swaying like a drunken bull behind him before settling. He was alone. The voice was gone. The CB turned itself back on. He's behind you. Cole shifted into gear and floored it, tires squealing as he shot forward, speedometer crawling past 80-90. He looked in the mirror. No lights. No trucks. Just the long, black emptiness of the Texas night. Then his headlights caught something. In the road. It was a rig, parked sideways across both lanes. No hazard lights. No driver. Just a red Peterbilt cab with streaks of black down the side and an open trailer door. Cold mist poured from it like dry ice. Cole swerved. He missed it by inches. Tires catching gravel. The whole rig shaking like it might fall apart. The trailer bounced, then righted itself. He didn't stop again. Not until he reached the Flying J. The lot was empty. The pump's dark. The store locked. But the payphone on the side wall was ringing. He stepped out. Walked over. He didn't want to pick it up. Every hair on his neck told him not to. He did anyway. The voice on the other end whispered, "You're next." Then the dial tone. Cole never went back to Amarillo. He traded in his rig 2 days. Later in Lubbock, cashed out his retirement early and moved to Oregon. He doesn't talk about that night. Won't touch a CB radio. Lives in a cabin off the grid now, with no tech, just books and silence. But late at night, when the wind howls just right across the pines, he swears he can still hear that voice, still crying. still calling for help on channel 13, and when he hears it, he turns every radio off in the house, locks the doors, and sits in the dark with a shotgun in his lap, because she's still out there, and now she's not alone. They say ghosts don't walk highways. They linger in old houses, abandoned hospitals, dark forests. But anyone who's hauled freight down I-10 near Fabins after midnight knows that rule doesn't hold out here. Especially not for the woman in white. I'd been on the road for nearly 12 hours that night, pushing hard to make a Walmart delivery window in El Paso. Driving solo, full load of perishables, no time to waste. I passed through Fabins just after midnight, moonlight washing. The asphalt in dull silver. The desert on either side stretched flat and endless, only broken by fence posts and scattered brush. That looked like crouching figures if you let your imagination get the better of you. I saw her just past the mile marker, standing at the side of the road, one hand raised like she was flagging down a taxi. Pale skin, hair dark as oil and so long it whipped in the wind like seaweed in a current. And the dress white, flowing, not modern. Looked like something out of a century-old funeral. Lace cuffs, high neck, dragging on the ground. I don't stop for hitchhikers, especially not at night. But something about her made my foot ease off the gas. Could have been the way she stood, perfectly still. Could have been the cold that suddenly pressed against my arms despite the fact that my cab was warm and sealed. Maybe it was the way she looked right at me, like she'd been waiting. I stopped. She didn't speak. Just walked to the passenger side and opened the door, slow and silent. When she climbed in, her movements didn't make sense. Too smooth. Like she was floating, not sitting. I remember the weight sensor didn't even register. My dash still showed just me. As soon as the door shut, the lights died. Headlights, dash, everything. Total blackout. Then the engine sputtered and the brakes gave out. I hit the pedal, but nothing happened. I gripped the wheel tight, trying not to panic, trying to keep control as the truck coasted down the highway like a dead man on a stretcher. "Don't worry," she finally said, and her voice was soft. Not sweet soft like mold, like the breath under the floorboards. "He just wants to see you." I looked over, and she wasn't there anymore. The passenger seat was empty. Then the whispering began, from behind me. From the sleeper cab. At first, I thought it was static. A leak in the radio system. Then it grew louder, distinct. It knew my name. "James," it breathed. "James, James." The voice was close, too close. I turned the mirror toward the sleeper, but the black curtain was shut. Still, the whisper came through it like smoke, wrapping around my ears, cold and damp. I reached behind with one hand, trembling, and pulled the curtain back. Nothing, just the blankets. My jacket hanging off the hook. My duffel. And then I saw the imprint. It looked like someone had been lying there. Still was, maybe. The fabric of the mattress was depressed, but nothing was visible. Just that whispering. "James. You remember her, don't you?" I slammed the curtain shut and stomped on the brake again. Nothing. The whole truck was gliding like it was on ice. And then, from the corner of my eye, the woman was back. Not in the passenger seat. In the road ahead. She was standing right in the center of I-10, arms down, palms open, eyes wide, waiting. I veered hard. The truck skidded, wheels screaming, trailer jerking like a hooked animal. The whole rig lurched off the pavement into the gravel and dirt. I braced for impact, but it never came. Everything just stopped. The lights blinked back on. The engine roared as if nothing had ever gone wrong. The brakes hissed, caught. I was parked half on the shoulder, half in the desert scrub. She was gone. So was the whispering. I sat there, heart pounding like fists on a coffin lid. Then I drove. No music, no stops. Just El Paso in the mirror and that stretch of highway left. Behind like a closed chapter. I didn't tell anyone, not then. Not until I heard another driver at a diner 3 weeks later mention a woman near Fabin's. White dress. Walks the road at midnight. Gets in if you stop. He never made it to El Paso. His rig was found 30 miles west. Empty. Lights off. Engine cold. Sleeper cab soaked in salt water for reasons no one could explain. That's when I started digging. Found more than a dozen reports truckers. Local cops, even a couple of teens in a beat-up Civic who swear they picked her up before swerving into a ditch and waking up 6 hours later with their fingernails gone. No one agrees on who she is. Some say she's the ghost of a migrant woman killed along the border wall trying to find her children. Others say she's something older, Aztec or Apache. A spirit who punishes those who've spilled blood on her land. One theory chilled me to my bones. They say she isn't the danger. She's the warning. What follows her is something else. That's something that lives in the dark part of your truck. The place where you hear things late at night, where the curtain moves when the windows are shut, where you swear you feel eyes on you when you're dead tired and 200 miles from home. That's where it waits. And if you let her in, it comes too. I quit 2 months after that. Sold the rig, moved north. I drive a school bus now. Never past 4 p.m., never alone. But sometimes I dream of her. I-10. Midnight. She's standing on the road again, smiling now. This time, she knows I'm watching. And the whispering has started. Again. Not in my sleeper. In my house. In my bed. I haven't looked behind the curtain yet. Not yet. The Pecos rest stop was a sorry dot on a forgotten stretch of I-20, a piss-yellow building squatting beneath a single halogen light that flickered with a sound like gnats frying. It had 2 vending machines that only took exact change, a soda, fountain that hadn't worked since the Bush administration, and a bathroom stall door that never stayed shut unless you wedged it with your boot. People didn't stop here because they wanted to. They stopped because they had too tired to keep driving, too full of gas station coffee to wait until Van Horn. Truckers passed through all the time. Some would walk in, piss, stretch, buy a stale honey bun, and leave. Others lingered, slumped into the torn vinyl of the break room couch, rubbing their eyes and checking their logbooks. The place had a microwave that never got anything hot and a fridge that always ran too cold. The kind of cold that nipped your fingertips even in July. A cold that got into the spine, like frost working through wood. Nobody ever asked why the fridge was so damn cold. Nobody opened it past midnight. Not after what happened to Leo Ransom. Leo was one of those old-timers. The kind of trucker with a beard yellowed by Marlboros and stories soaked in bullshit. He ran long hauls from El Paso to New Orleans and talked like a man who'd seen the devil hitchhiking near Odessa. People humored him, bought him coffee, listened to his stories when the nights got too long, too dark, too quiet. He swore that somewhere in the desert, time didn't move right, that if you drove west too far, you'd come back younger. Sawed once he saw a kid walk into a gas station in 1978 and never come back out, even though his car was still idling at the pump. But Leo wasn't a liar. Not really. He just didn't care if people believed him. He only told you the truth once you were tired enough to hear it. It was late December when Leo pulled into the Pecos rest stop for the last time. Ice. In the wind. Dead cold. Even for West Texas. His rig had been giving him trouble, stuttering like a man with secrets, so he parked it and limped inside. Boots thudding against the linoleum. He poured himself weak coffee from the blackened pot and settled into the couch with a grumble, pulling his jacket tight. The other driver there, Jimmy Price, new kid out of Waco, said Leo kept glancing at the break room fridge. Said he looked spooked, like it was watching him. like something behind the frost-lined plastic was moving. Jimmy didn't think much of it at first. He was just glad for company. That was before Leo leaned in, serious as hell, and whispered, "You ever hear it humming when there's no power?" Jimmy frowned. "It's always humming. Not when the lights go out." They sat for a long while, talking low. Jimmy said Leo told him about a man who lived in the icebox. Not died there. Lived. Still lived. Said he first saw him back in 1991, one night when the road was too slick to keep driving and the Coke machine had eaten his last quarter. Leo had opened the fridge, hoping to find someone's forgotten soda. What he found instead was a man naked, pale, smiling, curled up in the crisper drawer like a cat in a basket. The man's eyes were a clouded blue, his lips almost black with cold, and when Leo yanked the door shut in shock, he could still feel the presence. Not just see it, feel it, like breath on the back of his neck or fingers behind the eyes. He said, Leo muttered to Jimmy, that the man asked to trade places. Just like that. "It's warm out there," he said. "It's cold in here. Let's trade." Jimmy laughed, nervous. Leo didn't. "No joke," Leo said. "Every year since then, I've driven this route in winter. Every year I stop. Just to check. Just to see if he's still in there. And every year I hear him, just past midnight, scraping at the inside of the door, asking again." That night, Jimmy fell asleep around 12:30 on the couch. Leo didn't. He sat there, clutching his thermos and staring at the fridge. When Jimmy woke, the place was quiet. The heater had shut off. The coffee machine was dead. Every light in the break room had gone out except for the fridge light, which glowed a sharp, icy blue. The door was wide open, and Leo was gone. The only thing left was his thermos. Still warm. They found him 4 days later during a deep freeze. Not outside, not in the truck, in the fridge. Tucked into the crisper drawer, knees to his chest, lips blue, smiling. Coroner said hypothermia. No signs of trauma. But the weird thing? The fridge wasn't even plugged in. Since then, the stories got worse. A mechanic on his way to Midland stopped for a piss, found the fridge humming louder than normal, like a hive of bees inside. He opened it and swore he saw frost creep along the floor, toward his boots. A janitor from Pecos said the fridge won't let you close the door anymore unless someone's inside. I put someone's inside. Woman driving cross-country took a picture of the fridge for a travel blog. When she got to her hotel, the image showed something else. A pale face, eyes wide, pressed against the inside of the glass. Behind the racks of half-eaten burritos and crusted yogurt cups. They say now, if you open that fridge after midnight, he'll be waiting. The same man Leo saw. The same one that grinned and whispered, "Let's trade." Some say it's Leo now. That he took the last man's place. That this thing, whatever it is, needs someone to fill the cold. Always. Truckers. No better now. They don't open the fridge past midnight. They don't sit in the break room too long. And if you do hear the humming get louder, you leave. Even if your coffee's not done. Even if your feet are tired. Even if you're curious. Because if you open that door and he's there, you'll feel it. The pull. The cold, sharp whisper. Curling into your ear like frostbite. It's warm out there. It's cold in here. Let's trade. And once you agree, even without meaning to, you're the one humming. It was a 2-lane road carved through the heart of nothing, the kind of highway that looked the same going forward as it did behind. Just flat land and heat shimmer, broken only by barbed wire fences and the occasional dying tree. Harold Green, a middle-aged mechanic from Midland, didn't like driving west after dusk, but the job out in Sweetwater had run long. And now here he was, pushing 80 on an empty stretch, the sunset bleeding out behind him like a busted artery. Gaslight blinked to life just as he passed the rusted sign. Full serve ICESNAKKS. Fuel up. Ahead 3 miles. The kind of crooked wooden sign that seemed older than the road itself. The kind you passed without thinking twice unless you were low, real low. He was. The place came into view like a mirage. An old Sinclair station, its green dinosaur long since faded to bone white. The pumps looked old enough to remember the Kennedy assassination, and the building, a squat little rectangle with grime-black windows, seemed more like a bunker than a store. But what stood out most were the kids. 2 of them. A boy and a girl, both maybe 10, 11 at the most. They stood in front of Pump 2, hands at their sides, faces tilted slightly toward the road like they'd been waiting. They wore matching. Overalls too clean for kids that lived in dirt country, and both had the kind of pale skin you only got from staying out of the sun. Their hair was blonde, but it wasn't natural, not like sunshine blonde. It looked brittle, like straw soaked in ash. But it was their faces that stopped Harold's hand from reaching the ignition again. Their eyes were wide open, too. Wide.unblinking. The kind of stare you might see on a mannequin that someone tried too hard to make real. He rolled down the window a crack. "You kids out here alone?" They didn't answer right away, just turned in unison to face him. It was like watching one mind operate 2 bodies. The girl spoke first. "Where you headed, sir?" Harold hesitated. He hadn't even turned off the truck yet. The boy chimed. In next, exact same tone, like they were sharing a script. "Where you headed, sir?" "Nowhere important," Harold said, voice catching in his throat. "Just headed back to Midland." They both smiled. Not like kids. Not even like people. Just a slow, deliberate curl of the lips. Harold's stomach turned. The boy walked to the pump and lifted the nozzle. "We'll get you filled up." "I didn't say I needed," he started, but the girl had already unscrewed the cap. He looked down. He hadn't even heard her walk over. "No charge," she said. "We like helping travelers." He should have driven off right then. Should have. Peeled out onto the road and taken his chances with fumes. But something kept him there. Maybe it was the way they moved, like dancers underwater. Or maybe it was how damned quiet everything was. No bugs, no wind, no music inside the station, no humming from the sign. Just that pump clicking to life. And the sound of fuel rushing into his tank. "You run this place?" he asked, forcing calm into his voice. They nodded at the same time. "No parents?" "No one but us," the girl said. Harold tried to chuckle. "Well, that's something." "We used to have more," the boy said, staring at the pump. They left. The girl turned to Harold again. "Do you want a snack?" "No, thanks. She was already holding a bag of chips." He hadn't seen her move. It was just in. Her hands now, like she'd pulled it from nowhere. "They're fresh," she whispered. "We got cold drinks, too." "In the back." He reached to decline, and as his fingers brushed the edge of the bag, he caught her eyes again, still wide, still staring. He pulled his hand back. "Actually, I'm good." The pump clicked. "Full tank. You're all set," the boy said. "Where did you say you were headed?" Harold fumbled for his wallet, but the girl stopped him with a gesture that didn't belong to a child. Graceful, slow, final. "No charge," she repeated. He stared at them for a long moment. "Well, thank you." They didn't respond, just watched him climb back into his truck and turn the key. The engine started, but the air inside felt wrong, now thicker, heavy. He rolled the window up halfway and looked back. The girl waved. The boy tilted his head. Neither of them blinked. Harold drove. He didn't look back again, even when the road curved. Even when he thought he saw them standing in the rear view. Still waving. It wasn't until he hit the outskirts of Midland that he noticed the shift. The gas gauge hadn't moved. Still full. Good. But the trip odometer blinked 0. He hadn't reset it. He pulled over under a flickering street lamp and stared at the numbers. Then he saw a dot, not 0. Just 3 letters. Faint on the digital readout. His chest tightened. He looked in the rearview again. Empty. He shook it off. Drove home. Told himself he was tired, losing it. That night he dreamt of the kids, standing at the foot of his bed, asking again, "Where are you headed?" He didn't answer. The next morning the tank was still full. The next day, 2, and the third. By the 4th, Harold got in his truck just to burn it off, drove loops around town, up and down the interstate. Still full. And that's when the whispering started. At first, just under the music. A soft voice like static, brushing against his ear. Then louder, clearer, "Where are you headed?" He stopped sleeping. Stopped driving. Stopped talking to friends. Everyone thought it was a breakdown, but Harold knew the gas station wasn't real, or maybe it was. Maybe it was older than the map. Maybe it waited for people like him, people who had nowhere left to go and didn't care much if they got there. A week later, a deputy found his truck parked on the shoulder just outside Abilene. No sign of Harold. Tank still full. The last ping from his phone showed him traveling west. The strangest thing? The timestamp on the final message he sent to his brother. Just 3 words. See you there. The boy and the girl still stand by pump. 2. They don't blink. They don't charge. They just ask one thing. Where are you headed? They say it's the cheapest gas for 200 miles in any direction. That station just west of Bowie, Texas, off the old road that runs parallel to 287, the one most folks don't take anymore unless they're local or desperate. No lights around. Just the low thrum of cicadas in the dark and the glowing red digits on the pump like a dying heartbeat. I wasn't desperate. Not really. Not yet. Just trying to save a few bucks on a haul from Laredo to Amarillo. Deadhead. Miles make a man stingy, and I had maybe 50 in the tank. So I figured I'd fill up and sleep it off in the cab till morning. But I never got to full. And I never slept. The station didn't have a name, not when I saw anyway. No neon sign, just a tin awning over 2 battered pumps and a boxy little building behind it that looked like a trailer from the 70s squatting in the dust. The kind of place that still sold RC Cola and moon pies and smelled like cigarettes soaked into the drywall. I pulled up to pump 2. The place was deserted. Not even a raccoon scurried under the dumpsters. Just the stillness of that Texas night, the kind where the air feels swollen and thick with dust and memory. The pump was analog, no card reader, just a slot for bills and a clunky digital readout that flickered when I tapped it. I slid in a 20 and lifted the handle. The nozzle coughed like a dying man and then started pumping. I watched the numbers climb, gallon by gallon, 5, 6, 7. I turned for a second, just a second, to spit in the dirt, and when I looked back, the gauge had dropped. From 7.3 gallons to 6.9. I blinked. Thought maybe I misread it. Heat can do that, play tricks. I wiped my forehead and looked around. Still empty. Still quiet. The tank wasn't full. I knew it wasn't. I could hear the echo of hollow space inside it. So I kept pumping. The needle ticked upward again. 8. 8.3. 8.6. I turned to look at the road. There were footprints. Wet, muddy, leading from behind the pump to the rear tires of my rig. They weren't there before I'd have seen them. Perfect outlines of bare feet. Human. Small. Like a kid's. Froze. The pump clunked and paused like it was waiting for me to do something. I turned full around. No one there. Just the dark and a whisper of wind stirring mesquite branches behind. The station. I walked a few steps back toward the trailer building. It had one flickering light above the door and a dusty Coke machine humming beside it. I cupped my hands and peered inside the smudged window. Nothing. No clerk. No shelves. Just shadows and what looked like an empty stool at a counter. The kind you find in diners. The kind that swivels even when no one's touched it in hours. I turned back. Another set of footprints had appeared. This time beside the front wheels. They weren't wet anymore. These were darker, thicker, like they'd stepped in oil or blood. Let the pump drop. The handle smacked the side of the rig and clattered to the concrete. Screw this. I climbed back into the cab and fired her up. The engine groaned and sputtered once before catching. I threw it in gear and eased forward, needle still not at full. Still hovering at 3/4, even though I'd paid for more. Didn't matter. I just needed to get away. But when I reached the exit and turned to merge back onto the road, the headlights blinked out. Both of them. At once. Not a flicker. Not a dim. Just off. The dash lit up like a Christmas tree. ABS warning, engine check, battery fail. Every idiot light screamed at me. The wheel locked up for a second, then jerked hard right on its own. I hit the brake. Nothing. We coasted slowly back toward the station. It was like the truck didn't want to leave, or like something didn't want me to. I slammed it in park and jumped down. Gravel skittered beneath my boots. I popped the hood and stared into the guts of the engine like it might confess something. But everything looked fine, not fried, not overheated, just wrong. The footprints were back, now circling the cab, dozens of them, wet and oily, crisscrossing over each other like someone had been pacing for hours in frantic circles. Some big, some small, some that looked broken. Twisted toes splayed out like they'd been stomped flat. One set had only 3 toes. I didn't know whether to scream or run. Then the pump clicked again. That dry metal clunked like a trigger being pulled. Turned back. The nozzle was swinging. Slowly, like someone had just let it go. The digital readout on the pump flashed again. The numbers started climbing even though I wasn't touching it. 5 gallons. 6. 7. I looked toward the trailer building. The door was open now, just a crack. Enough to see the stool inside. It was spinning. Something moved in the doorway. Not walked, moved. A crawling, jerking motion like it wasn't built right for standing. I saw a pale arm, too long, too thin, knuckles dragging. Then a second arm. Then a smile. Just a smile in the dark, wide and gleaming, and far too low to belong to someone standing upright. I backed away. The footprints squished beneath me as I moved, like the concrete was soaked. But there hadn't been rain in weeks. Not in Bowie. Not in June. The lights above the pump turned red. Not off. Not broken. Red. Like warning lights. Like eyes. Then I heard it. Breathing. Behind me. I didn't turn around. Not at first. It was wet, shallow, wheezing, like something with water in its lungs. Then it spoke, not yet full. I turned. Nothing there. But the air was colder now. Thick, heavy like a drowned blanket. My boots were wet. I looked down. The puddles were gone. No footprints. Just water. Black water pooling around the rig, spreading like ink. I climbed back into the cab and twisted the key. Dead. Twisted again. Dead. The whisper came again. This time from the sleeper cab behind me. Not yet full. I didn't want to look, but I did. I turned slowly toward the curtain. It was bulging. Just slightly. Like someone was pressing a hand from the other side. Then another. Then another. Too many fingers. I grabbed my phone. No signal, of course. The red pump light outside blinked once. Then everything went still. No whisper. No breathing. Just silence. I Sat there for what felt like hours until the sun began to rise and the light spilled over the lot. The truck started like nothing had happened. The needle jumped up past 3/4, passed full into the red zone like it was overfilled. I didn't question it. I drove. Didn't stop. Didn't breathe until I hit the Amarillo Petro and parked in the middle of a crowded lot. I never found that station again. Tried once. Just once. Took the same road. Drove slow. Nothing there. Just brush and heat. But I check my tank now. Every time, if it's not full, I don't stop. And if I have to stop, I don't look down. Because sometimes, just sometimes, I still see the wet prints. And the needle always drops just a little every time I blink. The squeegee sat in the same cracked red bucket outside Pump 6 at the Huntsville rest stop right off I-45, just before the long stretch into East Texas where the trees start pressing in and the radio gets static heavy no matter what station you try. The building itself looked like it hadn't been touched since the Reagan years. Mold growing up the corners. Faded Pepsi logos on the vending machines that no longer worked. A flickering bug light buzzing over the bathroom door that always swung open a few inches no matter how hard you shut it. But that damn squeegee was spotless. Every time. Didn't matter the dust storms, the sweltering heat, the long chains of tanker trucks rolling in from the Houston port. The sponge never had grime, the handle never rusted, the bucket water never turned to the greenish soup you see at other stops. And folks noticed. Maybe not on the first pass through. Maybe not when you're tired and running low on caffeine. But the regulars, those who drove nights, those who kept to themselves and paid attention to the little things, they all said the same thing. Don't touch the squeegee at Pump 6. Of course, most people didn't believe that kind of thing. Just trucker folklore. Another dumb story passed around to keep new guys on edge or to spice up late-night diner conversations. One guy, Donnie LaRue, he made a point to use it every time he stopped. Said it was superstition, just old men trying to sound spooky. Said it in that cocky way people do when they don't really believe in anything. He was hauling cattle feed that summer, headed north toward Corsicana, and figured he'd stretch his legs before the last leg of the drive. August heat pressing down like a grudge. LaRue never made it. They found his rig idling just off the edge of the rest stop, headlights pointed toward the tree line, door wide open, and cab lights blinking slow. CB still squawking static like someone had keyed the mic and left it on. His boots were on the ground beside the bucket. That squeegee leaned up against Pump 6, clean as ever. Water still in the pail, no splashes, no mess, just sitting there. Like it had never been used, but no Donnie. His wallet, keys, even his thermos of black coffee sat right there on the cab seat. Nothing touched, except for one thing. There were wet streaks, slimy and curved, running from the side of the cab toward the back tires. And something had scratched the chrome. Thin, jagged etchings like claws, only too wide set and too low. To the ground, like whatever made them was crawling. Word spread, but not fast. These kinds of things don't hit the news. They fizzle out, especially when there's no body, no crime scene, no blood. Just a missing man and an empty truck. And a rest stop no one wants to talk about anymore. You ask around, though, real quiet like, and you'll find people who remember like Ellis Jarrett, who ran loads between Austin and Shreveport. 40 years on the road. Doesn't talk much, but when he does, his voice carries the kind of weight that makes you stop fiddling with your coffee cup. He only told the story once, said it was back in '99, Halloween night. Rain pounding so hard you could feel it in your teeth. He pulled into the Huntsville stop because his wipers had started to stutter, and he figured he'd clean off the windshield real quick. He didn't know the stories back then. Pump 6 looked like any other, except for the fact the squeegee wasn't soaked like the rest. Just damp enough, tidy, waiting. He said when he grabbed the handle, something pulled back. Not hard, just a little resistance. Like suction, but enough to make him pause. That's when he felt it. Movement. Under the sponge. Not like water sloshing. Or air bubbles. No. This was different. Intentional. Like something small was shifting beneath the layers. He turned it over slow, expecting maybe a dead mouse or a frog stuck inside. But he saw something else entirely. Flesh. Thin. Pale. And pink-gray. Like undercooked meat. Fingers long and segmented. Not human, not even close. They flexed and jerked when the sponge flipped. One had a tiny hooked claw. The others seemed to recoil from the air like they hated being seen. And then they darted back inside the sponge. Dropped it, stepped back. Said he was gonna leave, but something else caught his eye. The bucket was empty. No water. Just a black hole inside. Not darkness like shadow, but like it wasn't there at all, a flat, unnatural void. Like looking into the eye of something ancient and buried. He left. Peeled rubber, burned his tires bald, didn't stop till he hit Nacogdoches. That was the last time he ever drove that route. Others whispered of things too. Things they saw in the mirror after they used it. Wet handprints appearing on the side of the cab while parked at night. A smell like raw shellfish mixed with gasoline. One driver, a rookie named Ray Contreras, said he used the squeegee on a dare, and the next morning found tiny scratches on the inside of his windshield. Like something had tried to claw its way out. He quit the next day. But still, every week someone stops. Someone new, and someone uses it. Because no one puts up signs, no warnings, no barricades. The truck stop owners won't even acknowledge it if you ask. Just stare and say, you must be thinking of another place, even though you're not. Even though you know it's real. Sometimes, people claim they've seen something actually crawl out. Something wet and wiry and fast. Too fast to get a picture. Too fast to scream. It slips under trucks. Into drainage grates. Down into the cracks between pavement slabs. It waits. And every time the squeegee is lifted, it learns a little more about you. Where you're going. What scares you. What you love. Because it doesn't want to just scare you. It wants to follow. So next time you pull off I-45, tired and squinting through bug-streaked glass, and you see that one clean squeegee standing by. Pump 6, don't touch it. Don't even look at it. Too long. Because something is in there. And it's waiting for you to invite it out. The sign above the canopy was sun-bleached and leaning. Petrol King, it said, but the K was dangling, barely hanging on by a strip of rusted bolt. It sat off State Highway 36 near Jones Creek, a stretch of Brazoria County most people passed through without stopping. Not because it looked unsafe, though the moss-eaten signage and the sagging awning didn't help, but because there was something about it that prickled the nerves. Like the land itself was holding its breath. Locals never filled up there. They went out of their way to the Shell in Freeport or the Chevron off 288. But the tourists, the out-of-towners on their way to Surfside Beach or those lost on a detour, from Galveston, they always pulled in. That was the pattern. The station caught the eyes of the uninitiated. Something about the flickering green LED sign that never seemed to match the real gas prices. Or maybe it was just the way it stood. Alone, as if surrounded by more than just trees. As if watched. One Friday afternoon, a man named Craig was passing through. Divorced, mid-40s, driving a dusty gray Altima that smelled faintly of mildew and cheap cologne. He was heading from Houston down to meet a woman he'd met on a dating app. Said her name was Lacey. Said she lived near Oyster Creek. Sighed. She liked men who made her laugh. Craig didn't laugh much. But he smiled through the messages, made jokes about bourbon and bad country songs, and somehow landed a Friday dinner invite. He'd stopped for gas just past 5 p.m. The sun hung low and fat, spilling long shadows across the highway. He saw the Petrol King sign and swung in. There were 4 pumps. One car already there. A pale blue minivan at pump 2, no one inside. The doors were shut. No sign of movement. Craig pulled up to pump 4, the one at the far left edge, closest to the woods. He got out, slid his card, and began pumping. The air smelled like pine, salt, and something underneath. Something sour, faint, but wrong. The kind of smell that triggers old instincts, a memory of rot, of animal dens and damp graves. He shook it off. He looked left, not because he meant to. It wasn't curiosity, really. It was reflex, the kind of turn you make when you hear something in your periphery. Only he hadn't heard anything, not a sound. The woods were still. So still that even the birds seemed absent. Trees, thick and gnarled with black moss, stood tight together beyond the cracked fence that bordered the station. Dense, unnaturally so. As if the woods were pressing in, trying to reclaim the land. And somewhere inside those woods, just beyond the 5th or 6th tree line, Craig saw a dot at first. It looked like a man, tall, thin, standing between 2 trunks. Skin pale like driftwood. No clothes. No movement. Just watching. Craig blinked. It was still there. Its head was turned at an angle too sharp to be natural. Neck tilted sideways like a snapped chicken. There were no eyes, just black holes where eyes should be, as if something had scooped them out. And its mouth, long and stretching far across the cheeks, hung open in an expression that was neither scream nor smile. Just open. Craig took a step back. The gas nozzle clicked. Full. The sound broke something in him. He fumbled the handle, spilling a little gas on his shoe. He didn't look left again. He didn't need to. He could feel it now. That thing in the woods, watching. He slid into his car too fast, turned the key. The engine coughed, then stalled. Once. Twice. 3 times. The 4th time, it turned over. Craig floored it, tires screeching over the gravel as he shot out of the lot, heading west, not even caring that he was going the wrong direction. He drove for 20 minutes before he stopped to catch his breath. His heart didn't slow until he saw the minivan again, that same pale blue van, parked at the edge of the trees, in a turnout off the road, empty, except for the shape in the passenger seat. He didn't stop. He didn't call anyone. He just kept driving. Windows up, doors locked, eyes straight ahead. 3 days later, they found Craig's car off County Road 44. The driver's side door was open. The engine was running. The gas tank was full. Craig was gone. His phone was in the passenger seat. The last photo on the camera roll was a blurry shot of a tree line. Nothing visible. But zooming in revealed what looked like 2 pits of darkness, set into something vaguely human-shaped. Locals shook their heads when they heard. Another out-of-towner who looked left. There were rules at Petrol King, the kind whispered over beers at the Broken Oar and passed down through the families that had lived in Brazoria County for generations. Fill up. Shut up. Don't look left. You could feel it watching, sure. And sometimes you might hear it, a sound like dry paper tearing or a whisper too wet to be human. But looking? That was the mistake. It didn't like being seen. And once it knew your face, it would follow. Not loud. Not fast, but it would follow. It didn't matter where you went. You could drive to Houston, to Austin, to the edge of the Gulf. You'd see it, reflected in mirrors, standing across parking lots, pressed against your window at night. And eventually, you'd vanish too. Like the teenage couple from Dallas last March, like the traveling salesman in February, like the woman from Oregon in December. Her rental car was found outside the station, engine warm. Pump 4. Tank full. Always pump 4. And always the same smell in the air. When they came to investigate, sour, damp. Locals say the woods behind Petrol King never end. Not really. That if you step between the trees the wrong way, you never come out. That the thing in the woods is older than the highway, older than the station, older than the town itself. Some say it was summoned. Others say it was born when something died angry. A spirit that fed on glances, on recognition, on attention. But most people don't ask questions. They fill up. Elsewhere. Because they know. There are rules in Brazoria County. Fill up, shut up. And whatever you do, no matter how strong the itch, no matter what you think you saw in the corner of your eye, don't look left at Petrol King. Because if you do, it'll follow you home. The bathroom behind Millie's Diner wasn't anything special. Brick walls crusted with decades of paint, a rusty vent fan that buzzed like a fly stuck in a beer can, and 2 stalls, one with a door that didn't latch, the other that just wouldn't open all the way unless you lifted it at the hinge like you were offering it up to God himself. The mirror above the cracked sink was spotted with age, warped at the corners, so your reflection always looked like it was trying to get away from you. No one ever cleaned it properly, just swiped at it with bleach water and a rag when the smell got to be too much. But still, people used it. Travelers, mostly truckers, salesmen, road-weary families headed down through Lot on their way to Waco or Temple or somewhere. They could stretch their legs and pretend they hadn't felt the air shift when they pulled in. But the door, the bathroom door, that's what people talked about. If they talked at all. It didn't open outward. Not like a regular door, not like it was supposed to. Every other door in the diner did. You could watch the kitchen swing both ways, the front entrance push and pull. Even the mop closet had that outward swinging snap. But not the bathroom. Once you stepped inside and let it close behind you, it locked with the sound that felt thicker, then a click more like a throat clearing. If you noticed it at all, it was always a second too late. And once it shut, it wouldn't open again. Not if you pulled. Not if you shouted. Not if you threw your shoulder into it until you bled from your teeth. It waited. The first person who ever mentioned it was a woman named Darlene Wyatt, a substitute teacher from Marlin, passing through Lot in the spring of '84. She left her Buick running while she popped into Millie's for a quick coffee and a bathroom break. 15 minutes later, her coffee was cold on the counter, and the waitress, Jolene, figured she'd skipped out. Only the car stayed. And Darlene didn't. They found her 3 hours later, curled up in the corner of the bathroom stall like a punished child. Her palms pressed so hard against her eyes that the skin had peeled. She kept saying the same thing over and over, even after they strapped her to a stretcher and wheeled her out. It's in the mirror. It watches you blink. That was the start of it. A local deputy, Larry Green, came sniffing around 2 weeks later. He'd heard the stories, figured it was kids or maybe something in the cleaning fluid that made people loopy. He asked Millie if he could set up an overnight stack out in the diner. She laughed and told him the ghost didn't punch a clock. But he stayed anyway, drinking cup after cup of black coffee and watching the bathroom door like it might flinch. At 2:17 a.m. He went inside. The door closed behind him like a whisper. He never came out. His cruiser was still idling the next morning, his radio squawking static. The sheriff busted the bathroom door in with a crowbar, and they found Green's belt, gun, and boots neatly placed beside the sink. His badge was stuck to the mirror with something that looked like spit. But Green was gone. Not dead. Not kidnapped. Just gone. They checked the plumbing, the vents, even peeled back the drywall. Nothing. No trap doors. No tunnels. Just a nasty little bathroom that didn't let go of people once it got hold of them. Millie tried to shut the place down after that, boarded up the bathroom and hung a sign that said "out of order" in red crayon. But folks still wandered in. Curiosity's a hell of a drug, and in a town like Lot, there ain't much else to do except chase stories and drink cheap whiskey. By the early 2000s, it became a kind of dare. Go piss in the mirror, they'd say, chuckling, slapping each other on the back. See if it blinks first. Most people came out fine. A little shaken. Some said the mirror moved when they weren't looking. Some said they heard breathing behind the stall. One guy, Danny Rios, used to drive for long-haul freight out of San Antonio, swore he heard his dead mother whispering his name from inside the vent. He left trucking after that. Took up gardening. Never said another word about it, but the ones who didn't come out, they were always the same kind. People running from something. People carrying guilt like a second skin. Mason Burke was one of them. A man with too many regrets and a face that looked like it had been carved from worry. He came through Lot Inn. A rented Ford Taurus, hands trembling on the wheel, staring too long in the rear view like someone might catch up with him. He sat at Millie's for 2 hours, ordered nothing, just sipped water and stared at the corner where the bathroom sat like a closed eye. Finally, just before dusk, he stood up, muttered something about needing to wash his face, and walked through the door. He didn't come out. When Millie found the bathroom door jammed again, she didn't bother calling the sheriff. Not anymore. She just hung a new sign. Nitrogen monoxide restroom. Don't ask. Thing is, the door still opens. Sometimes, late at night, when the parking lot's empty and the wind's blowing from the south, you can hear it creak just a little. Like something on the other side is testing it. Some say it's not the bathroom that takes you. It's what's inside the mirror. They say if you look at your reflection long enough, it starts to show you things, places you've never been, faces you shouldn't recognize, memories that aren't yours. Some people say it shows you the moment you die. Not how, just the look on your face when it happens, but the real trick, the cruel one, is that it doesn't grab you right away. It waits. It waits for you to close your eyes. Just for a second. Just a blink. That's all it needs. One blink, and the door doesn't open anymore. One blink, and the mirror starts breathing. One blink, and you're no longer where you thought you were. You're part of it now. People still stop in Lot, still ask. About Millie's. The diner's under new management, and the bathroom's been remodeled, or so they claim. Tile floors, motion sensor lights, air fresheners that spray lilac every 10 minutes. But the door still doesn't open outward. And sometimes, if you listen real close after midnight, you'll hear someone tapping on the inside of the mirror. Just beneath the glass. Tap. Tap. Like they're trying to blink their way back out. The gas station just north of San Angelo was the kind of place you'd miss if you blinked. Nestled between two rusted mile markers off an unlit stretch of FM 1223. No sign, no pump numbers, just a single flickering light above the canopy and a squat rectangular building that looked like it hadn't been cleaned since the 80s. Jacob Dunn wasn't the type to spook easy. He'd been long-hauling for 16 years, seen just about every flavor of weird America had to offer. But the feeling that slithered into his chest the moment he turned off the ignition was something else. Something colder. It was past midnight. A dead zone on the CB. The heat had broken hours ago, but sweat still clung to the back of his neck. He told himself he just needed caffeine. Maybe a piss. Maybe just some air outside the cab. The hum of cicadas fell away when he opened the door. Total silence. Not even the whisper of wind. Just the crunch of gravel under his boots and the sound of his own breath, which suddenly seemed too loud. The inside of the station was lit with jaundiced overhead fluorescence. The air smelled like old beef jerky and pine sol that hadn't been used in months. There were a few dusty coolers, all humming just slightly off sync. A rack of snacks that leaned like it was drunk. And behind the counter, standing absolutely still, was the clerk. He didn't look up, not at first. Just stood there, elbows sharp beneath a brown uniform shirt that didn't seem to fit quite right. Thin, tall, too tall. His name tag was scratched, out with black Sharpie. His face pale as milk, eyes two wet coins sunk too deep into their sockets. No hair, no beard. Just smooth skin, the kind that looked like it had never known the sun. Jacob cleared his throat. "Y'all open?" The man didn't answer, didn't nod, didn't move, just stared straight ahead. Jacob stepped in, the bell above the door not ringing. He looked around again. No camera, no radio, no sound. He pointed to the back wall where the coffee machine sat, just grabbing a cup. Nothing. He poured the coffee. It came out slow and thick like syrup. Burned his fingers when he touched the handle. As he filled the styrofoam cup, he glanced back at the counter. The clerk had moved just a step forward. Maybe two. He was standing just past the register now, still staring, still not blinking. Jacob blinked closer now. A half step behind the candy rack. Jacob's stomach knotted. He tried to speak, but the words caught in his throat like they didn't want to come out. "Hey, you good, man?" The clerk tilted his head. A twitch. Nothing more. Jacob blinked again. Now the clerk was at the end of the counter, hands folded in front of him. His fingers were too long, too thin. They bent in ways that didn't look right, like sticks wrapped in wet skin. One eye was a little lower than the other. His mouth was small. No lips. Jacob backed up toward the door. He didn't blink. Not yet, but his eyes burned. The air was dry, thick, like breathing dust. He reached for the handle behind him. He blinked. The clerk was right at the door, nose nearly touching the glass. Still inside, still unmoving, but there, close enough Jacob could see the thin veins beneath his translucent skin. His tongue, black and smooth, darted out once to touch the corner of his mouth. Jacob threw the door open and stumbled outside, dropping his coffee. It splattered across the concrete like tar. He bolted for the truck, fumbling for his keys. His breath came fast now, ragged, his boots dragging across gravel. He opened the cab door and climbed in. Locked it, slammed it shut, sat still. Didn't blink. The clerk was inside the store again, standing exactly where he had been at the start, like nothing had happened. Like time reset every time Jacob blinked. He reached for the ignition, turned the key. The engine didn't start, just a grinding cough. Again. Nothing. He blinked. The clerk was outside the store now, 5 feet from the front of his truck. Jacob screamed, slapped the dash, twisted the key again. The engine whined, choked, then caught. He didn't wait. Slammed it into gear and peeled out, tires screaming against the dirt lot. He didn't stop. Not until he hit the next lit gas station 30 miles down the road. Inside that station, there were people. Real people. Music on the radio. Air conditioning that actually worked. Jacob tried to laugh it off. Bought a Red Bull. Used the bathroom. When he came out, he glanced through the window. The parking lot was empty except for his rig and the clerk, standing just outside his cab, face nearly pressed to the glass. Jacob blinked. Gone. He didn't sleep that night. Just kept driving, eyes wide and dry, chugging caffeine, praying for dawn. But dawn didn't come. The sky lightened, yes, but it stayed gray, clouded, off. His GPS rerouted without asking. The roads didn't look the same. Signs with no names. Mile markers repeating. Every gas station he passed looked like the one before. Every clerk he saw looked like him. Too tall. Too still. Too quiet. He stopped trusting rest stops. Pissed in bottles. Ate out of his cooler. Told himself he was imagining it. Told himself maybe it was the heat or the stress. Maybe something in that coffee. He told himself a lot of things. But he didn't stop blinking. He couldn't, because every time he did, that clerk was closer, sometimes just a step, sometimes a whole mile. And one night, 3 weeks later, somewhere in Oklahoma or maybe back in Texas, he couldn't be sure, Jacob fell asleep at the wheel. Just for a second, just long enough to blink. They found the truck idling on the shoulder. Driver's side door open, interior lights flashing. No sign of Jacob. Just wet footprints on the seat, and long dark finger smudges across the inside of the windshield. The coffee cup was still full and the holder. Steam rose from it, slow and thick, smelling faintly of pine and burnt skin. The call came in at 3:42 a.m., long after the rest of the dispatch office had gone dark except for Jim Hardy's corner cubicle. He was halfway through a lukewarm cup of vending machine coffee and working out a backhaul route for a rig stranded in Lubbock when the line buzzed a direct channel, one that hadn't lit up in over a decade. The number blinking on the screen was familiar, but impossible. The system had flagged it immediately. It shouldn't have been active. It had been marked dormant in 2011, archived after the driver assigned to it never returned from a haul. Through West Texas, the headset crackled once, then a voice gravelly, flat, emotionless. "This is driver 483 Delta. I've got one live load. Eastbound headed for yard 12 in El Paso. Cargo, myself." Jim blinked. He hadn't heard that call sign in years. Not since Eddie Jarvis disappeared somewhere south of Odessa, en route to a container yard that had since been shut down and condemned for environmental concerns, which was dispatch. Lingo for "we found something we weren't supposed to." No body was ever found. Just an empty cab parked behind a drainage ditch, keys in the ignition, and claw marks, real ones, on the inside of the windows. Jim reached for the manual override and started to trace the call, but the signal was scrambled. Not masked, distorted, like it wasn't bouncing off any tower. Just arriving. He cleared his throat. "Say again? Did you say? You're hauling yourself, driver?" Silence. Then a low exhale, like wind through teeth. "I'm all that's left." ETA 22 minutes. Open the gate. And the line went dead. Jim stared at the login. The voice had been so clear, but the number matched Eddie's truck. That was impossible. Eddie's rig had been stripped, its vang deleted from the system, its plates returned. And yard 12? That place had been fenced off after the third time someone reported hearing screams coming from the empty trailers at night. He stood, unease crawling under his skin like ants behind drywall. Something in his gut twisted, an old reflex from years on the road himself, before the heart attack took him off the seat and put him behind a monitor. He knew that feeling. It was the one you got just before a tire blew, or when your brakes locked at 60 on black ice. Jim called it in. 2 guards posted at the lot gate. Both local boys, ex-oil field, used to weird things. He didn't tell them what the call said, just that something was coming, and they needed to be ready. The truck arrived at exactly 4:04 a.m. Looked like hell. It was a Freightliner, matte black, no numbers on the side. Old model, maybe 2005, but the cab looked like it had been submerged in salt water and left in the sun, rust along every edge. Windows spiderwebbed. Headlights off. The engine coughed once and died as it rolled to a stop at the gate. No sound but the squeal of brakes and the gentle tick of cooling metal. No one got out. The guard stood frozen for a moment, watching. Then one approached the driver's side and rapped on the door. The smell hit first. They would both later describe it differently. One said it was meat gone bad in the heat. Another said it was the smell of burning hair and bleach, but they both agreed on one thing. It didn't smell like anything that came from this world. The driver's side window had been smeared with something dark. It wasn't dust or grease. It was streaked, deliberate, like someone had tried to claw their way out. The door creaked open on its own. The guard stepped back fast, one hand on his radio dot inside the cab. There was no one, just a pile. A horrific, glistening heap of flesh, skin folded like a suit. Fingernails, hundreds of them, broken and bloody, scattered across the seat. A CB radio covered in dried fluid, still hissing faint static, and something else. The seatbelt was buckled. Through the radio came the voice again. Delivered, as promised. Jim quit that night. He didn't wait for the incident report, didn't. Stay to answer questions from the company or the state investigators or whatever agency it was that showed up the next day in unmarked vans and didn't give names. He just walked out, still in uniform, and never returned. They say the truck was towed, but no one saw it leave. The lot was bulldozed 3 weeks later, but the gravel where it sat turned black. The kind of black that doesn't fade. The kind that looks wet, even in full sun dot, and sometimes, on certain nights, truckers say they still hear that call sign. Driver 483 Delta. A man, hauling only himself, bound for nowhere, and dying to get delivered. They showed up again just outside Big Spring. Harlan Boone had been driving since noon, Texas sun burning white lines into his eyes until dusk softened the horizon and the land turned the color of old blood. The road, US 87, was long and lonely. Out here, flat plains for miles, scattered oil pumps dipping their metal heads like praying skeletons. He'd driven this stretch 100 times, but tonight was different. Tonight felt wrong. He was hauling empty pallets back to San Antonio. A dead-run, light load. His Peterbilt rumbled like a sleeping giant beneath him, steady and familiar, and the only sound beside the engine was the static of the CB radio. He wasn't talking to anyone. Not tonight. Not since he heard what he heard last time. They called it whispers in the wires. Other drivers had told stories at the truck stops, nothing official. Nothing over the company radio, just late-night warnings whispered over diner coffee. Red lights that weren't headlights. Sounds over the CB that didn't match the channels. Voices repeating things no one said. No one wanted to admit they believed it, but every man who drove past Big Spring alone got quiet when you brought it up. Quiet or gone. It started around 11:42 p.m. He checked the dash clock without knowing why. Just a chill like the air suddenly thinned out in the cab and something old was breathing through it. He flicked on the defroster, though the windshield wasn't fogged, just a reflex. And that's when he saw them. 2 red dots in the rear view, not brake lights. Too high, too close together, too bright. He eased off the gas, let the truck coast. The lights stayed exactly where they were 20 feet behind, glowing through the dust like eyes. No sound. No headlights, no movement. He blinked. They were still there. Breaker 1 to 9, he said, voice low. Any ears on? A burst of static. Then a voice answered, but it wasn't a voice he recognized. Not Slim from Lubbock. Not the twins out of Amarillo. Not even that chatterbox rookie who always played country music too loud through his CB. This voice was wrong. It sounded like 2 people talking at once. One whispering, the other screaming, and both coming through the same torn speaker cone. They see you, Harlan, it rasped. We see you. He jerked his hand off the mic like it was hot. The lights flickered in the mirror. Still there, he turned the knob to Channel 7, dead air. Channel 13, static. Channel 19, silence. Then, back on 13, the whisper came again, left shoulder. 300 yards, his heart thumped once hard. His mouth went dry. Ahead, in the gloom of high beams stretched thin by dust and distance, something moved near the shoulder. A shape. He slowed. Not a deer, not a man. It was wrong. Bent. Backward. Knees jutting up where the back should be. Head cocked like it had been stapled to the spine. It turned as the rig passed and smiled. Every tooth was red. The red lights vanished from the mirror. For one blessed second, he thought it was over. Maybe he'd been too long on the road. Maybe the pills he'd taken to stay awake were wearing off, hallucinations kicking in. He slapped his face, shook his head. Then the engine choked. Not stalled, choked. Like someone stuffed a wet rag in the intake. The dash lights dimmed. The steering wheel stiffened. Every warning light blinked at once and then cut out. The CB screamed. A burst of feedback, then a dozen overlapping voices shrieking like they were being burned alive. Through the shrieking came a single voice, his own, repeating something he hadn't said. I didn't stop. I didn't stop. I left her there. I left her. He slammed the brakes. The rig groaned, tires locking up, the trailer fishtailing in. The gravel until everything stopped with a metallic moan. The lights were gone again. The CB was quiet. He sat in the cab, breathing fast, eyes on the mirror. Then the whisper came again. You remember now. He did that 20 years ago. A stormy night. He was a rookie, barely 2 weeks into his first solo haul. He'd picked up a hitchhiker just outside Stanton. She was soaked to the bone, maybe 19. Said her name was Jules. Said she'd been trying to get to Abilene to see her sister. Sweet girl. Talked too much. He'd gotten tired of it. Gotten angry when she reached for the radio. He hadn't meant to shove her so hard. She hit her head. Slumped against the dash. He checked her pulse. Nothing. Panic set in. He pulled over near a dirt service road, dragged her into a dry culvert and left her there. Covered her with trash bags and broken tree limbs. Drove away. Never told anyone. That was the last time he used CB channel 13. Until tonight. He was shaking. Now, full body tremble like a fever had set in. He opened the door, dropped down to the gravel, and retched. His vomit steamed in the cold air, chicken tenders and coffee from the last stop curling into a sour puddle near his boots. Then he heard it. Footsteps. Not one person. Many. All around him. Crunching gravel, soft breaths, the wind carrying laughter, tiny, high-pitched, inhuman laughter. He looked up. They surrounded the truck. Figures. Bent. Broken. Their eyes glowing red. No pupils, just orbs. Some of them crawled. Some walked on all fours. One dragged what looked like a CB antenna still attached to his scalp. He stumbled back into the cab, slammed the door, locked it, jammed the keys in. Nothing. No power. No engine. The radio hissed. Breaker, breaker, Harlan. We see you now. We all see you now. The mirror cracked on its own. A spiderweb of fractures danced across it as if struck by a tiny hammer from the inside. He looked through the windshield. She stood there. Jules. Still 19, still soaked. But her face was wrong, half smashed, skull dented, one eye drooping loose in the socket. She smiled. Then she opened her mouth and red light poured out. His cab filled with it. Warm at first, then burning. His eyes stung. His skin peeled. He screamed as the sound rose, louder than a jet engine, louder than hell. The next morning his truck was found 20 miles down the highway, parked neatly on the shoulder. No driver. No sign of struggle. Engine cold. CB radio melted to slag. Only. Thing left was a red smear on the driver's seat and 3 words scratched into the inside of the windshield. I see you. They say you can still hear him screaming sometimes. If you're driving that stretch of 87 near Big Spring and you tune to channel 13 after midnight, you might hear him begging, whimpering, pleading not to be taken back, not to be shown again, but it's too late. The red lights are always watching, and once they find you, they never look away. They say she screamed for hours. It was a Sunday, summer 1998, a little after 3 a.m. at a gas station off Route 385 near Odessa, the kind of place that looked forgotten even when it was open. Desert all around it, nothing but scrub and sand, and a wind that could skin your ears if you stood in it too long. The station was called Midland Mart back then, a crumbling concrete block with a single canopy covering 8 pumps. Pump 6 sat at the far end, closest to the back fence, where the floodlights never quite reached and the gravel lot sloped down into shadows. A Fay Silver Crown Victoria pulled in and parked beside Pump 6. The car didn't fuel up, didn't move, just idled for a bit, then went quiet. Witnesses say the driver, a pale man with a long face and thick glasses, got out and went inside, bought a pack of American spirits and a cherry Coke, chatted with the clerk about the heat, nothing strange. Then he left. That's when the screaming started. It wasn't a fight, and it wasn't the TV. Customers in the store heard it first, low and muffled, like a coyote trapped in a pipe, then louder. Raw, panicked, like lungs tearing. People ran out to see the woman pounding the inside of the Crown Vic's trunk, fists banging under the metal, whole car shaking. Nobody opened it. That's the part no one talks about. 5 men stood around that trunk and didn't do a damn thing. Not even the store clerk, who came out holding a tire iron but didn't raise it. The driver wasn't anywhere. Gone. Just vanished. Then the screaming stopped. Not faded, stopped. Like someone had cut a wire. Sheriff's deputies showed up an hour later. They popped the trunk. It was empty. No blood. No marks. Nothing but a woman's torn fingernail jammed into the trunk lining and a long dark hair coiled like a noose around the spare tire. The car had been stolen 2 days earlier out of Amarillo. The driver? Never found. The station shut down 3 years after that. Midland Mart was bulldozed and replaced by a 24-hour Circle Z, sleek and new, with LED lights and surveillance cameras at every pump. But Pump 6 stayed where it was, same spot, same strange shadow falling just shy of the security light. People still used it, of course. Nothing strange at first. But then the reports started again. It began with a whisper. Drivers long haul. Truckers mostly would stop to fill up. They'd swipe their cards, lean back against the rig, and that's when they'd hear it. From the back. Always from the back. A sound like something sliding against metal. A breath. A voice. Let me out. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just calm. Desperate. Over and over. Let me out. One guy swore he popped his trailer latch mid-fill because he thought he had a stowaway. Another claimed he heard scratching from his trunk so loud it drowned out the pump chime. But when they looked, nothing. Then it escalated. First, it was just sound. Then people started feeling things. A hand brushing the back of their neck. Tug at their belt. A tap on the shoulder. One woman, young, college age, stopped in a rental car just before dawn. She called 911 sobbing, screaming that someone was in the trunk. The dispatcher told her to stay put. She didn't, single quotes T. She opened the trunk herself. The officer who arrived on scene found her catatonic, curled in the fetal position near Pump 6. Eyes wide, blood dripping from her ears. Trunk was empty. Then the dashcam footage surfaced. A delivery guy named Marcus had one of those cheap dashcams mounted in his rear window. He parked at Pump 6 around midnight to grab a coffee. 10 minutes later, he returned, climbed into the cab, and drove off. It wasn't until he reviewed the footage during a police statement that he saw her. The moment he stepped out of his truck, the footage flickered. For half a second, static overtook the frame. And then there she was, a woman, pale, hair wet, and stringy, slowly rising from the closed trunk of his own vehicle. Not climbing out, rising. As if the trunk wasn't there at all, she never turned around. She just stood, back arched unnaturally, fingers twitching at her sides. The footage cut again. When Marcus climbed back in, she was gone. They say if you pause the footage just right, you can see her face reflected in the glass of the pump behind him, her mouth open wide, teeth like nails, eyes black as oil. Circle Z never confirmed any of this, but they quietly decommissioned Pump 6 last year, left it standing, unplugged and dead, like a rotted tooth they couldn't pull. Didn't matter, because she's not in the pump. She's in the place. Whatever happened that night in 1998 cracked something open, something deeper than asphalt and older than the highway. She's in the shadow of that spot, in the steel and the rubber and the smell of unleaded that never quite fades. Every vehicle that stops there becomes part of it. There's an old trucker named Benny who lives in a trailer park outside Van Horn, retired now. Won't go within 50 miles of Odessa. Says he parked at Pump 6 in '09, back when it still worked. He didn't believe the stories, called it all road ghost bullshit. He even laughed while fueling up. Then his trunk opened on its own. He drives a semi. Doesn't have a trunk. He says it was like the truck peeled open, metal curling backward like a sardine can. Inside was a girl, no, a woman, he says. Face beaten bloody, but her mouth was open and screaming. Not sound, just wind. Like all the wind in the desert was being forced through her throat. Then she lunged at him. Benny blacked out. Woke up 30 miles west in a jackknifed rig with no fuel and a full tank receipt in his shirt pocket. Pump 6, he doesn't remember. What happened in between? Just one thing. The whisper not let me out. This time it was get in. Benny lost 3 fingers to frostbite that night. They never found out why. The tongue outside were in the 90s. If you go to the Circle Z now, you'll see Pump 6 still standing, dark and useless, with a plastic bag zip-tied over the nozzle. But if you listen close, really close, you'll hear her, especially if your car is still running. The metal will creak. The back seat will feel heavier. You'll hear something moving where nothing should be. And your trunk, no matter how new your car is, no matter how recently it was inspected, your trunk will unlatch itself. And should be there, not just screaming this time, smiling. They always said not to stop between mile markers, 346 and 348. The old-timers on the CB would pass the warning like gospel. Keep rolling, son. Don't tap the brakes through that stretch, not unless you got a death wish. Most folks laughed it off, thought it was just another trucker's tale, like phantom hitchhikers or glowing eyes in the tree line. But the ones who'd been out there, really been out there, stopped laughing a long time ago. I used to be one of the skeptics. Been driving long hauls since I was 22, put 250,000 miles on my Freightliner before I turned 30. You see some strange shit on the road, no doubt about that. Once saw a man standing naked on the median in the middle of a thunderstorm, arms stretched toward the lightning like he was praying to it. Saw a doe explode through the windshield of a Civic at 70 miles an hour and keep kicking for a full minute, blood bubbling from its nose like soda fizz. But nothing ever stuck with me. Nothing ever followed me until that night south of Waco. It was early January. Cold, but not enough to see your breath. One of those nights where the dark feels too thick, like you're driving through ink instead of air. I'd left Dallas late and was headed toward Laredo with a trailer full of refrigerators, ironically. Enough. My logbook was good. The radio was crackling with garbage from drivers way up near Austin, and I had a thermos of coffee keeping me company. Somewhere just past the turnoff for West, Texas, I hit 346. I remember it clear as glass. The road dipped just slightly, and the white lines blurred. I figured it was the caffeine wearing off, Or maybe the road was just slick with dew. But something about the asphalt looked wrong, like it was melting or rippling. I blinked and leaned forward, gripping the wheel tighter. The CB hissed, went silent, not quiet silent. Like someone had sucked the sound out of the air. The first thing I noticed was the radio. It didn't just cut out, it went to static for a heartbeat, then absolute dead air. Even the display froze. No time, no frequency, just blank. Then my headlights dimmed. Not all at once, gradual, like someone sliding a dimmer switch down. And then gone. Darkness swallowed the road. I tapped the brakes, not hard, just enough to slow. The rig bucked a little. I checked the dashboard. Everything was lit up like a Christmas tree, engine light, oil pressure, alternator. All screaming at me. I pulled off to the shoulder, or at least I thought I did. Without headlights, it was hard to tell if I was even on the road anymore. I put it in neutral and killed the engine. That was the first mistake. The silence after the engine cut was unnatural. No ticking of metal cooling down, no wind, no sound of insects. Just the weight of stillness, pressing against the cab like it wanted to squeeze the air out. And then the knock came. Not on the door. Not on the window. From inside the engine. 3 sharp raps. Hollow, like knuckles on the inside of the hood. I froze. The air in the cab turned cold, not chilly. Cold. I could see frost beginning to creep along the inside of the windshield. I reached for the ignition, fingers numb, turned the key. Nothing. The rig was dead. Another knock. Then a scraping sound, metal on metal. Something shifting beneath the hood. Not an animal, not a loose part. Something else. I opened the door and stepped out, boots crunching on gravel, or what I assumed was gravel. I couldn't see a damn thing. The darkness was so complete it felt like I'd gone blind. I clicked on my flashlight and aimed it at the hood. The beam died after 2 seconds. Battery was fresh. Didn't matter. I heard breathing. Not mine. Slow. Wet. Coming from the front of the truck. A sucking inhale, like someone trying to breathe through a mouthful of mud. Then another knock. My legs didn't want to work, but I forced them forward. I rounded the cab, heart hammering so loud I could barely hear the footsteps behind me. My footsteps, I thought, but they weren't in sync with mine. Too many. Too fast. The grill of the Freightliner groaned. I swear to God it shifted, like something inside was pushing against it. I raised my hand, ready to lift the hood and take a look, even though every fiber in my body screamed not to. But then the knock came again. And this time, a whisper followed, "Let me out." I stumbled back, tripped, fell hard on my ass. The gravel wasn't gravel, it was too smooth, too cold. My hand landed on something wet. I looked down and saw it was oil, thick, black, but it was moving, crawling along the ground like it had a mind of its own, slithering toward me. The door of the cab slammed shut. I didn't touch it. And then the truck started on its own. Light still dead, but the engine rumbled to life, smoother than it had in weeks. The dashboard lit up like new. The frost melted instantly. The oil on the ground hissed and vanished. I stood up, heart in my throat, and backed away. The cab door opened, slowly, waiting. I should have walked away. I should have run, but I got in. I don't remember the rest of the drive. I only know I was in Laredo by sunrise, parked at a love station, windshield coated in grime I couldn't wash off, looked like soot, smelled like something rotten. I tried to get the truck serviced. Later that day, took it to a shop outside town. The mechanic popped the hood and called me over, pale as a sheet. He pointed to the inside of the hood. Something had been scratching at it, from the inside. Deep gouges. Not made by tools or animals. They curved inward, almost like claw marks. Almost like fingers, and written in the grime, faint but legible, were the words, "Thanks for the ride." That stretch between mile markers 346 and 348 is still there. Still looks ordinary by day, but after dark the road feels hollow, like a tunnel. No sound, no light. Drivers say they see figures just past the guardrails. Say their GPS loses signal, their clocks freeze, their eyes play tricks. Some never talk about what they saw. Others don't make it to the next truck stop. Me, I reroute now. I don't drive that way anymore, but sometimes on nights when I have to, if I pass through that stretch, I don't stop. Not for anything, because I know what waits in the engine. What's still riding with me. And I know what it wants. Highway 287 slices through Texas like a scar, cutting past cotton fields, oil pumps, and the brittle skeletons of towns that time forgot. It's the kind of road where you lose track of time, your eyes hypnotized by the endless stretch of dark, asphalt, and the rhythmic bounce of yellow lines. Most nights, it's just you and the road, maybe a trucker or two humming past, their taillights glowing like distant embers. But out past Vernon, where the land flattens into nothing and the trees thin out like old men's hair, the sky starts doing things it shouldn't. Johnny McCall was heading home from a job in Amarillo, a 3-day patch and paint gig in an abandoned school. He'd left later than he meant to, told himself he'd push through the night and be in Decatur by morning. Coffee in the Q folder, a cassette of Conway Twitty humming from the dash, and a cooler full of warm beer sliding around in the back seat. Just before 11, the lights showed up. At first, he thought they were stars, bright ones, low on the horizon, shimmering the way heat does in the daytime. But these didn't stay still. They moved, danced, dipped in and out of view like fish swimming through fog. There were 3 at first, then 5, then a dozen. Johnny leaned forward, squinting through the windshield. They weren't plane lights, he knew that much. He'd seen enough crop dusters and military aircraft around Dias to know the difference. These were wrong, too close, too quiet, too curious. They floated maybe 10 feet off the ground, pulsing faintly, like they were breathing. And when Johnny slowed the truck, they slowed too. He turned down Conway, rolled the window down. Nothing but wind and the faint buzz of crickets. Then the lights moved closer. Johnny blinked, and they blinked back. That's how it felt anyway, like they knew he was watching. Like they wanted him to. He told himself to keep going, to just gas it and ignore them. But the wheel shifted in his hands, just slightly, left toward a dirt road that had no name. Wasn't turning, he was sure of it. But the truck drifted like it had been caught in a current. And the lights welcomed him. Down the dirt road, the darkness thickened. The lights floated ahead of him now, bobbing just above the cracked earth. Like will-o'-the-wisps, Johnny's mind spun. He thought about his Uncle Ray, who swore he'd once seen a ghost cow in these parts. About the stories old farmers told in back booths at diners about lights that lured men off roads, about things in the dirt that didn't stay buried. He laughed to himself. Then the truck died. No sputter, no cough, just dead. The cassette slowed to a crawl and then nothing. The lights didn't vanish, they got closer. Johnny reached for his flashlight in the glove box. It clicked on for half a second, then fizzled. He sat still, holding his breath. The lights were at the hood now. Floating, humming, pulsing like jellyfish. One of them touched the windshield. No sound, just a soft glow pressing against the glass. Johnny felt heat on his chest, like he was sitting too close to a fire. He turned the key again. Nothing. Then the whispers started, not from outside. From the vents. From the back seat, from the glove box. Not words, just sound. Sliding, slithering, like something oily being dragged across skin. He opened the door and stepped out. The ground crunched beneath his boots. The lights moved away from the truck, deeper into the field, pausing like they were waiting for him. Followed. He couldn't say why. Maybe it was the warmth. Maybe it was the silence. Maybe it was something in the lights that reminded him of the hospital room where his mother had died. Soft, glimmering still, the field stretched on forever. No fences. No barns. No trees. Just him and the lights. They guided him in slow curves. Deeper and deeper until the truck vanished behind him. He tried to turn back. His legs didn't respond. Not like they used to. It was like walking in a dream. No weight, no control. The lights slowed, surrounded him in a circle, then dimmed. Darkness returned, like a blanket pulled over his head. He was alone. And then he wasn't. The thing that emerged from the dirt wasn't a person. It had fingers, yes, but too many. Its face twitched, searching for a shape, like it couldn't decide who to be. Johnny tried to scream, but the sound never made it out. The lights flared once more, and he saw it clearly. It had his face, and it smiled. When Johnny McCall's truck was found 3 days later, it was parked neatly on the shoulder of 287 near Vernon. Keys in the ignition, no sign of damage, no tracks leading away. Inside the cab, the driver's license sat on the dash, but the face in the photo didn't quite match the man they found. Wandering near Childress a week later, barefoot and covered in dust, mumbling about lights and dirt and things that wear your skin. He wouldn't sleep indoors anymore. Wouldn't eat food if it cast a shadow. And when asked where he'd been, he'd just whisper the same thing over and over. They didn't want to kill me. They wanted to remember me. Sometimes at night, drivers on 287 see the lights. They think it's a trick of the eye, or headlights. Or drones. But if you stare too long, if you slow down and squint real hard, the lights will stare back. And if you follow them, well, not. Unless you're ready to meet something that wears your face better than you ever did. The rest stop sat just outside Guthrie, Texas, smack in the middle of nowhere, where the mesquite brush gave way to hard-packed red dirt and silence thicker than molasses. Route 82 cut across the scrubland like a scar, the kind of highway one takes unless they're headed somewhere they ain't supposed to be. It was late October when I stopped. Cold for Texas, the kind of chill that bites through denim and settles into your bones. I'd been driving all night, my rig loaded with sealed barrels marked for a research facility up near the Panhandle. The manifest said organic compounds, but the placards on the drums said hazmat, and I'd been in this business long enough not to ask questions. I needed a piss, a smoke, and something cold to chew the taste of diesel out of my mouth. The rest stop had the usual squat concrete building with peeling beige paint, 2 busted vending machines, and one of those old ice dispensers outside, the kind with the faded penguin on the front and metal doors that never quite closed right. The parking lot was empty, not a soul in sight, just the desert wind hissing through the cracks. I lit a smoke and stretched my legs, bones popping like popcorn in a skillet. That's when I noticed it. The ice machine was humming, not loud, not broken, just steady. But the thing looked ancient. Rust stained the bottom edges like dried blood, and one of the hinges hung loose, bobbing in the breeze. There was no reason for it to be running. Nobody maintained this place. The state had stopped caring sometime around 1997, but the ice? It was fresh. I opened the lid. Inside, the bin was full, packed tight with shining, clear cubes like glass diamonds. No frost, no cloudiness, not even a hint of dirt. It looked cleaner than anything in that whole damn county. I reached in and grabbed a handful, letting it roll through my fingers. Cold, sharp, too cold. The burn lingered on my skin like dry ice. Even after I let go, that's when I saw it. A cube, slightly larger than the rest, nestled near the bottom. Something inside it. Not air, not dirt. An eye. Round, pale. Human. It was staring straight up. Through the ice, wide open and unblinking. Veins spiderwebbed around the iris like red cracks. The pupil dilated when I held it up to the light. It blinked. I dropped the cube and stumbled back, nearly slipping on the wet concrete. The eye rolled once on the ground before it stopped, still staring at me, still trapped in that frozen cage. My breath caught in my throat. I looked around, half expecting someone to jump out and yell, "Gotcha!" But there was no one. Not in the bathroom, not behind the machines, not even another truck on the horizon. Just me, the wind, and that humming machine. I crushed the ice with my boot. It cracked once, then again, then split open with a hiss like a snake. The eye rolled out, wet and red, trailing something stringy. Nerve endings, maybe. I couldn't tell. It twitched once, then stopped. I backed away fast, half jogging to my truck. But the machine kept humming. Even as I slammed the door and turned the key, the hum didn't fade. It grew low at first, then deeper. A vibration, like the kind that creeps into your chest and makes your teeth ache. The lights on my dash flickered. Then the AC kicked on by itself. The vents blasted out freezing air, ice cold, biting, thick with the scent of ammonia and something else. Something wrong. I shut off the engine, still humming. The ice machine was louder now, a rattling undercurrent beneath the hum. It sounded like something moving inside. Something heavy, wet, like meat sliding across tile. I had to look. I don't know why. Some part of me needed to be sure. I climbed out and walked back. The wind had died. The desert was dead still. The ice machine was vibrating. The lid rattled. I lifted it. There was no ice. Just water. Murky, pinkish water lapping near the brim. It stank of rot and bleach. And deep down, barely visible beneath the surface, something moved. A hand, bloated, pale, fingers twitching just beneath the slush. I dropped the lid and ran. Didn't stop till I was in the cab, key twisted, wheels spinning gravel. I didn't look back, not that night. But I never took Route 82 again, not until I met Frankie Bell. Frankie was a long haul out of Albuquerque, old-timer. Had a patch on his shoulder that said, Vietnam, 69. We met up at a truck stop outside Wichita Falls months later, swapping bullshit and bad coffee. I brought up the Guthrie rest stop, figuring maybe I dreamed it all. Too many hours behind the wheel, not enough sleep. But when I said, ice machine, Frankie stopped chewing. You saw it, he said. Not asked, said. I nodded. He reached into his coat and pulled out a cube, wrapped in plastic. Frozen stiff. Inside, a tooth. A human molar. Same damn thing, he muttered. 6 years ago. Broke one open. Still had the root on it. My dentist said it was fresh, like it had been yanked that morning. I asked him why he kept it. To remind me I wasn't crazy. He leaned close. They feed it. Who? The folks who disappear? You see the missing posters? People vanish out there all the time. Not just hitchers. Cops. Surveyors. One lady from Austin said her husband went out to get ice for their cooler and never came back. She waited 3 hours before calling the police. They found his truck running, door open, wallet on the dash. But no prints, no blood, just water all over the parking lot. He swallowed hard, and they say the ice is always fresh. I left that night and never looked back. But sometimes, late at night, when the rig's AC kicks on by itself, and the air gets colder than it should, I swear I hear humming. And if I check the freezer, sometimes I find a cube that doesn't look quite right. One had a fingernail in it. Another had what looked like cartilage. Don't break them anymore. I just drive and pray I never run out of ice. You had to drive at night if you wanted to make any money. That's just how it worked. The heat in Texas was cruel and the summer simmered off the blacktop until your mirrors warped like liquid, and if you didn't run dark, you spent half. Your haul on ice and diesel, so Harold ran nights. Been doing it since '91, long before the digital logs and GPS tattletales and sleep regulation apps. He knew the back roads, the choke points, the trucker bars that still served eggs after midnight, and which rest stops had vending machines that didn't spit back quarters. He also knew which stretches of highway made the hair on your arms stand up without warning. Didn't mean he turned back, though. Just meant you turned the music up a little louder, cracked the window even when it was cold, and kept an eye on the mirrors. This particular run had him rolling south out of Denton, trailer full of feed and fertilizer, the kind that stank up. Your cab if the plastic lining wasn't sealed right. He'd done the run dozens of times. Cut through Decatur, past Jacksboro, then east toward the smaller towns where the gas stations closed at dusk and the only lights were porch bulbs hanging from rusted chains. He started hearing the noise somewhere past Breckenridge. The sky had that moonless pitch, the kind that made your headlights feel too bright and not nearly enough. His FM was cutting out. Nothing strange, their stations faded out in this part of the state like ghosts that got tired of speaking. Switched to AM just to hear something. That's when it started. At first, just a low static. No signal, just the usual spit and crackle. He kept tuning the dial slow, precise, hunting for something human in the hiss. And then, not quite a voice, not music either. Just a long, dry sound like wind scraping against aluminum. It came in soft and low like something hiding behind the frequencies. He paused, listened, thought maybe it was his tires on the shoulder or the hum of the trailer brakes. He turned the dial just a notch more. The scream came through so sharp it felt like someone had jabbed a fork in his ear. He jerked the wheel, caught himself, righted the cab. The scream was still coming long and drawn out, not like anything you'd hear in real life. Too high, too sustained. Like whoever it belonged to had lungs that never emptied. It wasn't a cry for help. It was pain. Endless, blistering pain. He slammed the radio off. Silence. Just the growl of the engine and the blood in his ears. He figured it was a signal bounce. Maybe something weird with the towers. Maybe kids playing with a pirate radio setup. He tried to forget it, rolled on. The roads got narrower. The trees pressed in closer. But the silence, it was too complete. Not even crickets or frogs in the ditch water. No wind in the grass. Just the steady hum of tires on pavement. Then the whisper came from the speakers. Radio still off. It said his name, Harold. Soft, slow. Right behind his left ear. He slapped the dash so hard the GPS mount fell off. Harold. He turned the dial again, this time in a panic. AM band wide open, hoping to drown it out. But it didn't go away. Instead, it answered. Between 1320 and 1360 on the dial, the scream returned, layered now. Dozens of voices, maybe hundreds, all rising and falling in perfect chaos. And beneath them, steady, rhythmic, came the whispering of his name. Not just his name, but facts, secrets. The time you pushed that dog into the canal when you were 9. The lie you told on the application in '84. The pills you still hide in your glove box. He pulled over. Right there on the shoulder, dust rising like smoke. Around his tires. He jumped out of the cab, trembling. Cold sweat soaking his shirt. The highway behind him was black and empty. Ahead, just a curve into thicker trees. His hazard lights blinked into the void. He walked around to the front of the rig. Bent over. Dry heaved. When he climbed back in, the cab smelled wrong. Like rotting sugar or meat left too long in the sun. The radio was still off, but the screams kept coming. He pulled the fuse, yanked the whole thing out. It didn't stop. It didn't need the radio anymore. That's when he saw the shape in the mirror, something in the sleeper, curled into the dark where the dome light didn't reach. It didn't move, just watched. He didn't stop again that night. Didn't sleep either. By the time he reached the depot, the sun was rising and his hands were shaking too hard to sign the drop papers. The dispatcher took one look at him and called someone to help unload. He didn't say anything. Didn't need to, because he already knew what he'd do. He'd drive again that night. Same road, same time. He had to, because the whisper had promised it would keep going, that it would follow him into daylight, into his home, into his dreams. Unless he came back, unless he listened. Others know the route. Ask around at the right. Rest stops and you'll hear versions of it. Different voices, different names, but always the same time, after 2 o'clock. Always on aim. Between stations. Some truckers carry tinfoil-wrapped radios now. Some keep the whole AM band disabled. Others leave offering cigarettes, silver coins, little wooden crosses at certain markers on the side of the road, where they swear the scream started, but it doesn't matter. It always comes back, because it knows the name of everyone who hears it, and once you do, it never stops. Not until you scream back. The rain started just past Lubbock, a Texas kind of rain that doesn't just fall, it takes the sky down with it. It hammered the windshield of Darrell Croft's Freightliner with a furious rhythm, wipers squealing, barely keeping up. He'd been running hauls for over a decade, crossing 48 states and sleeping more nights in truck cabs than beds. But lately, something felt off. Roads were lonelier, the radio quieter, like the world had hollowed out a little and left him rattling through. The shell. He was carrying a load of pressure-treated lumber bound for a new housing development outside of Corpus. It was after 2 a.m., and he was somewhere south of Post, Texas, riding a dark stretch of Highway 84 where even the cell signal went to die. He hadn't seen another rig in miles. No headlights behind, nothing coming toward him. Just the storm, and the whisper of tires over wet blacktop. Then she came through the CB. Breaker, breaker, a voice crackled, soft and female. You there, big rolling south on 84? Darrell frowned. Channel 19? Always left it on, but nothing had come. Across it for hours. He reached for the mic. Yeah, this is Croft. You talking to me? Static. Then the voice came again, clearer this time, as if she'd leaned in closer to whatever microphone she was using. You've got a jackknife semi blocking the road, 3 miles up. I'd suggest taking the next left. County Road 312. Safer that way. Darrell blinked. He didn't recall any jackknife alerts. No flares, no warnings. But maybe it had just happened. He slowed down, peering through the wipers, then eased the mic back up. You local? I don't see anything about that on the GPS. Her voice returned, almost too calm, like molasses over gravel. I'm not on GPS. Trust me, Croft. You don't want to see what's up ahead. Take the left. You'll be safe. The CB cut to static again. He looked out through the storm-blurred windshield. There was a left up ahead. Just a narrow gravel road snaking off through cotton fields. No signage. Just a white reflector post. At the corner, like a warning finger, he hesitated. Then turned. The road was bumpy, winding between open fields and occasional tree lines. Potholes jostled the rig. Water pooled in low spots and the smell of wet dirt crept through the vents. He kept expecting the woman to come back on the radio, maybe tell him where this road led. But silence hung heavy. After 15 minutes, the gravel turned to cracked pavement. He passed an old mailbox so rusted the address was unreadable. Then a house, or what was left of one, caved in, roof eaten away by years of sun and rot. Windows like blind eyes. Another mile on, he He saw a town sign, warped, splintered, barely standing. "Welcome to Jasper Hollow." He pulled the rig. To a stop. Jasper Hollow wasn't on his map. Not on the GPS either. And yet here it was. 3 blocks of empty buildings. A feed store with shattered windows. A church with one door swinging in the wind. Street lamps long dead. The town was quiet. But it wasn't abandoned in the way old places usually are. It wasn't overgrown. It wasn't reclaimed by nature. It looked preserved. Like someone had pressed pause on time. He keyed the mic. "Hey, you still there? Voice on the CB? I took the road like you said." "Nothing. Look, I'm in Jasper." "Hollow. I don't know what's going on, but this place looks like a movie set." Still nothing. Then, finally, her voice again. Soft, almost whispering. "Stay inside the cab. Daryl, don't leave the rig. It's not safe after they hear the brakes." "What?" he asked, frozen with the mic in his hand. "Who's they?" But she was already gone again. Something moved in the rearview mirror. He caught it in the edge of his vision, shadowy figures stepping out from behind buildings. At first he thought it was a trick of the stormlight. Then another appeared. And another. Shapes. Dozens. Maybe more. They weren't walking like people. They twitched and swayed like marionettes on loose strings. No faces, no eyes, just forms. Their outlines shimmered like heat waves. He threw the rig into reverse. Tires spun in the mud-slicked road. The figures moved closer. Then, from his CB, her voice again, but this time urgent, sharper, almost panicked. "Don't back up. Don't run. Shift to drive. Take the alley behind the pharmacy. Now." His heart raced. He obeyed, steering forward down the narrow street. He spotted the alley barely wide enough for his rig and turned in, mirrors scraping brick. The shadows didn't follow. They just stood there, heads cocked, watching Dot as he squeezed through the alley. He passed a wall plastered with missing persons posters. Dozens of them. All faded, soaked, but strangely untouched by the storm. He saw a name that froze his blood. Greg Hollenbeck. Missing since 1986. Last seen, Highway 84, Lubbock County. Hollenbeck had been an old-timer at his first trucking gig. Drove a Kenworth. Vanished one summer night mid-haul. No one ever found the truck. Or him. The alley spit him out onto another road, this one newly paved. No rain here, no lightning. Just still air. And then he was back on Highway 84, as if the detour had never happened. The clock on the dash read 2:06 a.m., same as before. He hit the gas, breath caught in his throat. He never told anyone, not his dispatcher, not his daughter, not the other drivers at the truck stop in Bastrop who asked why he looked like he'd seen a ghost. But he kept the CB on. Every night, waiting for her voice. She came back a month later. Different part of Texas. Different storm. Same voice. "Breaker. Breaker, this is Route Angel. You there? Westbound on 105? He didn't answer. He pulled over instead, trembling, and turned the radio off. But some drivers still listen. They hear her. She sounds real. She knows your name, your cargo, your route. She gives you directions, tells you how to avoid crashes or bypass roadblocks. She even knows places you swear you've seen in childhood memories. Some drivers say, she's an angel. Others say she's trying to bring you home. But not the kind of home you want. No one knows where she transmits from. Her voice doesn't match any dispatcher. Her routes don't show on maps. Her towns don't exist anymore. Some haven't for 50 years. But when she speaks, drivers listen, and the ones who follow her, they don't come back, except maybe in photos. Nailed to old wood behind forgotten alleys in towns that don't exist anymore. And if you ever hear her, if she says, "Take the next left and you'll be safe," Whatever you do, don't. It starts with a crack of thunder sharp enough to rattle your fillings and a curtain of rain so thick it looks like the sky's pouring out its guts. That's the only time you'll ever see at the diner, not on any map. No listing, no Yelp. Reviews, no faded road signs pointing you off Highway 59. You just drive. Caught in the sudden violence of Texas weather, windshield wipers fighting for their lives, and then, somewhere past the timber mills south of Lufkin but before the Trinity River curves east, you spot the glow-dot silver, chrome bright and slick. With rain, the neon flickers blue and red like a heartbeat, humming steady through the downpour. A sign, maybe once flashing eats, now just buzzing blankly. The letters worn to wire bones. Nobody plans to stop there, but you will. Everyone does. Harlan Poe was on his third night run, hauling a deadweight load of dry paper goods to a Walmart distribution center in Houston. He'd been riding the line between alert and dead-eyed fatigue when the storm hit like a brick wall. The highway blurred. The shoulder disappeared. He should have pulled over, should have let the wind rage and the rain burn itself out. But that glow in the trees, that impossible shimmer of polished steel and old-time jukebox light cut through the murk like salvation. He didn't remember turning the wheel. Not really. One minute he was gripping it like a lifeline, the next he was easing onto gravel so slick it hissed under his tires. The diner loomed before him, soft and unreal, like something pulled from the dream of a man who missed the 50s too much. He parked beside 3 other rigs, all idling, their drivers nowhere in sight. Rain needled the roof of his cab as he climbed. Down, the world muffled under the watery roar. Inside, it was warm. Not the sterile hum of evacuee warmth, but something older like fireplace heat and stale cigarette breath. The chrome glistened with condensation, the booths red leather and uncracked, the tables clean in a way that made them seem untouched rather than maintained. A waitress stood behind the counter, blonde, bouffant, beehive style like something from a black and white sitcom. Pink uniform crisp, white apron so bright it hurt to look at. She smiled. Didn't blink. Coffee? Her voice sounded like it was coming from a radio down a well. Yeah, Harlan said, blinking the rain out of his lashes. Black. She poured without breaking her gaze. There were others. A man in a wide-brimmed hat and denim overalls sat at the far booth, stirring a bowl of chili so thick it barely rippled. A woman with nails painted the color of blood dabbed at her lips. With a napkin, her lipstick too perfect, her expression fixed. 2 teenagers at the counter shared a plate of fries, their movements too slow, too synchronized. Harlan slid into a booth, steam from the coffee curling under his nose like fingers. He took a sip. It tasted right, not good, not bad. Just right. And then the storm intensified. Rain pounded the windows like fists. Lightning flashed, and for half a second, he saw something in the glass. A reflection, his own, sure. But behind him something else. Something tall. Gaunt. Watching. He turned. Nothing there. The waitress was already approaching again. Pies. Fresh. Apple or pecan. He didn't remember ordering, but she set down a slice of pecan. Still warm. Steam curled from it like breath. On the house. He tried to ask her about the place, about the others, but his tongue stuck to the roof of his mouth like dried glue. So he ate. That's how it happens. They say. Truckers who stop during the storm don't remember leaving, don't remember pulling back onto 59 or merging south. They just wake up on the road. Like nothing ever happened. Only thing is, they're never quite the same. Eyes a little darker. Voices a little flatter. Always watching the sky when it clouds up, like they're waiting for the storm to call them back. But some don't wake up at all. Dispatchers get no answer. Loads go missing. Rigs are found abandoned by the side of the road, engines cold, doors unlocked, driver's seat damp like someone just stood up. And every single time, there's one thing left behind. Napkin.crisp, folded, no initials, no coffee stains. Just a message scrawled in looping red ink. The food's hot, the people don't blink. They say the diner's older than the highway, that it used to sit on the edge of some nowhere town swallowed up by a reservoir that never filled. That the people inside aren't people anymore if they ever were. Some think it's a trap, like those deep-sea fish with the glowing lures. Others say it's a test, that if you eat the food, you belong to it. But a few say you can pass through if you keep your head down. Don't order. Don't eat. Don't talk. Sit. Wait. Let the storm pass. Don't look anyone in the eye. Don't ask for coffee. Don't let the waitress smile at you for too long. And whatever you do, don't answer if someone taps on the window from outside, because there's always one more seat. Always one more booth waiting for someone too tired, too lonely, too desperate to wonder why the rain only starts when they're close, and why the diner only glows when no one else is around. So if you're headed south on 59, and the clouds crack open like a broken promise, drive on. Let the rain fall. Let the thunder chase you. And if you see that silver diner gleaming in the woods, like a memory trying to crawl back into your skull, don't stop. Because when the rain ends, it's gone. And so are the other truckers. They say the desert holds on to heat like an old grudge. South of Marfa, that heat lingers long after the sun has dropped behind the dark silhouettes of the Shainati Mountains, turning the flatlands into something closer to a kill than a landscape. That's where the road runs flat and straight, empty of other travelers after dark, except for the drivers who take the ghost loads, those midnight dispatches from a company called Ultralog Freight, which, according to every logistics database, worth a damn, stopped operating in 1996, but dispatches still go out. And truckers still take them. You don't hear about it on the CB. You don't find it on LoadSmart or DAT. It's passed by text, or word of mouth, or a slip of paper slid under a diner mug when no one's looking. Midnight pickup, just south of Marfa. Manifest blank. Trailer sealed. No questions asked. $8,000 to $10,000 for a short haul to the Texas border, sometimes no farther than Alpine. The pay gets wired direct, clean, fast, no follow-up. That is if you don't look inside. Gabe Rayburn heard about it in Pecos. He'd blown ahead, gasket on a backhaul from Phoenix, and was 1,000 short on the mechanic. He wasn't the superstitious type. Didn't drink, didn't smoke, didn't much like people, but he was good behind the wheel and careful with hours. So when the skinny man with oil under his nails told him about Ultralog, Gabe just nodded. You'll see the trailer off Ranch Road 169, the man said, pushing a folded slip of paper across the counter. Just hook and go. Don't try to open it. Don't even knock. It sounded like bullshit, but desperation dulls your instincts. Gabe figured it was hot freight or maybe something off the books. He didn't want to know. Didn't plan on asking. And the pay was too good to ignore. The turnoff was barely marked. Just a patch of gravel where the pavement ended and the earth turned to hard-packed dust. There was a trailer there, already dropped silver with no markings, the kind you see in army convoys. His headlights caught the reflective tape along the sides. The doors were sealed with wire locks. Blank white manifest in a plastic sleeve. No ID, no weight, no destination. He looked around. Nothing but scrubland and distant oil derricks wheezing in the dark. No one waiting. No guards. Just a dead radio signal and a sky full of stars that didn't seem to blink. He backed up, hitched, Check the brakes. The moment he stepped up onto the catwalk, he heard it. A single, heavy thump dot like something shifting inside. He froze. Listen. Nothing. He tapped the side with a gloved knuckle. Solid. Then he heard it again. 2 thumps this time. Not random, rhythmic. Like something breathing heavy and angry in the dark. He told himself it was load shift, a busted pallet. Maybe livestock. Maybe equipment. But the pounding kept going, soft at first, then louder. And then it stopped. He didn't check the manifest again. Didn't knock. Just climbed back into his cab and started down the road toward Alpine. 30 minutes later, the pounding started again. Not from the trailer now. From inside the cab. Behind his seat. He jerked the wheel and nearly ran off the road. Swung around. Empty sleeper. Nothing in the mirror. Nothing in the back. He was alone. Of course he was. He kept driving. The air turned cold, even with the heater on. His breath fogged the glass. The pounding grew softer, slower, like a heartbeat. He tried the radio. Static. Switched channels. More static. Finally, it went dead. At 2:17 a.m. He passed an abandoned way station. He hadn't seen it on the map, and the sign out front was sun-bleached to nothing. The whole building leaned left, like it had been caught mid-fall and frozen that way. Something about the place made his skin crawl. As he passed, he looked in the side mirror. The trailer doors were swinging. Open. He slammed the brakes and swerved onto the shoulder. Dust kicked up, choking the beams of his headlights. He jumped out with a flashlight, boots crunching on gravel, heart in his throat. The trailer doors were closed. Still sealed. He stared for a full minute, light shaking in his hand. Then something whispered. From inside the trailer. His name. Just once. Gabe ducked away, climbed into the cab, slammed the door, locked it. He drove the rest of the road without stopping, eyes locked on the road, knuckles white on the wheel. When he reached the drop point outside Alpine, it was a fenced lot with a single security light and a rusted gate. No guard, no clipboard. Just a yellow spray-painted sign that read, "Drop here." He backed the trailer in, unhitched, and drove. 2 days later, the money showed up in his account. No sender. No notes. He tried not to think about it. Tried to chalk it up to nerves. But the dreams started that week. Dreams of pounding, of heavy footsteps outside the cab, of desert roads that led nowhere, of voices whispering from the trailer, of faces pressed against the glass in the dead of night. He tried to talk to other drivers discreetly, asked if anyone else had taken a ghost run. Most just looked away. A few said yes. One guy out of Lubbock stared for a long time before answering. "Ever look inside?" Gabe shook his head. "Good, don't." That guy was found 3 weeks later, parked outside a rest stop in Sonora, engine running, doors locked from the inside, dead, no wounds, no signs of struggle, just blood pooling from his nose, ears, and eyes. Face twisted like he'd seen something that bent his brain inside out. The trailer he'd been hauling? Gone. No record. No trace. They buried him closed casket. Gabe didn't go. But sometimes, late at night on a desert run, with the road ahead empty and the stars wrong in the sky, Gabe sees a trailer on the side of the road. Unmarked. Waiting. He never stops. He never looks. But once, just once, he swears he saw the door swing open, and something inside stepped out. Something tall. Something pale. Something wearing a trucker's jacket soaked in blood, and when it turned to look at him, it smiled, like it knew his name, like it was waiting.